Sometimes when I'm playing a governor in Crusader Kings 3, I wish I had a more in-depth look at what it means to develop a place from a little village up to a grand city. Well, today, thanks to Ubisoft, who has sponsored me for this video, I can get that experience. Anno 117 Pax Romana is the newest Anno game set in the Roman Empire, releasing November 13th for Steam, Epic, Ubisoft Connect, PlayStation, and Xbox. Anyway, as a long-time Paradox gamer, I don't often venture outside of my comfort games, and that means Anno 117 will be my first Anno game, which is a franchise I've often heard good things about. That being said, I'm being told this may actually be the most ambitious and creative Anno game yet released, on account of its new multiplayer system. I'd engage with it, but alas, I have no friends. Instead, I'll be starting up a game as Marcus, as this game comes with a campaign to play. It functions like a tutorial and story mode, where your decisions will affect the fate of the Roman Empire. In terms of what this video is going to be about, I want to present the experience of a Paradox player trying out a game whose focus is significantly smaller in scope. So often in EU5, CK3, or Victoria 3, we can forget about the details that make up the interesting worlds we conquer and control. Through the eyes of the Roman governor Marcus, we'll get an idea of what it's like on the ground for our little subjects. It should be noted before we start that I still haven't quite upgraded my computer. I was hoping to do so a couple days before this video would be recorded, but then I caught COVID. Maybe you can still hear it in my voice. I'm almost fully recovered now, for those wondering, but in terms of the video, it means I'm still on my old PC, so the game's graphics are going to be as low as they can go. Sorry for the ugly look. From what I've seen, the game is actually quite pretty on proper hardware. Anyway, let's start the game with our first island, Juliana. This game has a story, but that's not really what I want to focus on for the video, so I'll mostly be ignoring it. The story acts more or less as a reason to give you objectives to achieve, and I found it endearing enough as I played. The game starts off by getting you to make some lumber, and of course that makes sense, as wood is a construction good. If Victoria 3 has taught me anything, it's that construction goods come first. We use that wood in a sawmill to make actually usable lumber, and then we can start cooking. The way this game works is that we make houses, and those houses have people in them that can work jobs. Those people then have needs, and if we fulfill them, we can upgrade those people to higher tier citizens who can perform better jobs at more useful buildings. It's a pretty simple gameplay loop on the surface, but as we get more and more buildings, it'll quickly complexify. To save you a lot of time of me just reading tutorials and slowly understanding things, let's jump ahead a bit to some of those more interesting buildings. I want to make clothes for my people, and to do that I'll need some hemp and a tailor. Hemp and other farming-oriented buildings take up a lot of land and come with no bonuses or negatives to the local population, at least for the ones I've unlocked so far. I've dropped some hemp on the left side of my little Roman colony, and now that farm will start making hemp. I can use that hemp at the spinner building to make clothes, but this is where things get interesting. The spinner makes clothes, yes, but it also makes income for all the houses in its range. Notice the buildings with green arrows above them when I look to place the building. This is what buildings do for you beyond producing needs for your people. They give modifiers to the nearby houses. In the case of the spinner, it's all positive and it's a small building so it's easy to place. For other buildings we may have a mixed or negative effect, or they may be large and awkwardly shaped. We'll see some soon enough. Anyway, I put down the spinner, and then put down a second one, not realizing that these area bonuses don't actually stack, so that was my bad. What can I say? I had about 15 minutes of gameplay under my belt at this point. Next, I want to make some hats, and those need wool from sheep and a felter. The sheep also don't have any area effects, but the felter further increases the income on our houses and adds some happiness. Stacking up with that, I put down a market to the north which will both fulfill a need for our people and provide even more income, but more importantly more population. Some buildings, like the market, do indeed increase the number of people that live in each of the houses near them, which in turn increases the workforce, and essentially lets you build more densely. It's very powerful. This is the main gameplay consideration of Anno 117, these stacking building modifiers, and the arrangement of your city, which is quite easy on the first level because it's a tutorial of course. Beyond that, we also have certain city stats like fire hazards, disease levels, and a whole ton more, but look, this video isn't a tutorial on Anno 117, it's instead meant to be my experience with it as a Paradox guy. So instead, let me actually skip through this tutorial island and jump right into the point where the game gives me some push. Due to the events in the story that I won't bother summarizing for you, we are being sent off to Albion, otherwise known as the wretched land of England, to set up a new city, with the guy that sent us there believing that poor Marcus will be certain to perish. Albion is not nearly so idyllic as the islands around Latium, and there will also be other considerations like the culture of our people and the terrain of the land. This is where I think Anno really comes into its own, so let's go have a little fun with it. Before that, here's how my first city ended up looking by the time I had to move on to Britain. It's not the most aesthetic, and that's because I put absolutely no effort into making it pretty, but Anno does a pretty good job of just being broadly pretty enough to cover my failures. So, off to Albion. One thing I didn't mention, but which is of critical importance to your city, is that each island has a set of things it can produce. Some islands don't have the right fertility to make certain crops, and those crops might be key pieces of a supply chain for producing stuff you need to give to your people. That begs the question, if you're missing something, are you just screwed? Well, no, you have a few options. You can either trade with other people in the world, or you can simply promote your people to different types that have needs which correspond to the island they're on. That choice will have its own downstream effects on things like what technologies you can get and what sorts of buildings you can make on that island, but again, let's not jump too far ahead. Another option you have is to simply settle more islands, and this to me feels the most attractive. If there's one thing that happens to me in city builders, it's that I eventually get tired of looking at whatever abomination I've built, and I just want to start again. But for story-driven games like this, that can mean losing huge progress. Instead, I can start up a new city on a new island, which is both a smart play and more fun for me. Regardless, what about those different promotions that we can do? In Juliana, we had only one path, which was the Roman path. Here we can promote people along two paths, but for this first island, I'll be only using the Romanized path, simply because you can't do both at once until you get some high-tier people. So let's build this city. First, we'll need some food. How's a sample of the local cuisine sound? Delicious eels, which we get from the marshes of Albion, are a staple food here. Marshes are a special terrain type which some buildings must be built on, and other buildings, that is most of them, cannot be built on. They're a pain to work around, but that's what happens when you come to Albion, I guess. Alongside eels, we'll also be collecting some cockles, which are like edible shells. Well, the creature inside the shell is the edible part. It didn't take long to get enough waiters, which is the name of the lowest tier citizen in our Albion society. Now we've got access to markets and bardic hearths. Both of these give more populations, they're pretty nice if you ask me. Almost immediately after unlocking those, I then also unlocked the new reed shoes building chain, and the same old tunic building chain from before. To make those reed shoes, I set up a reed farm out in the marshes and made my shoe weaver. The shoe weaver only gives happiness, so it's not super important to me compared to getting stuff like income or research, but we'll get there. Why the shoes matters is that they'll let me upgrade these pops to the next tier very soon. I set up a hemp farm near the shoe sewer, and then put my tunic building down. Thanks to a technology I researched back in Juliana, I actually get knowledge and income from the building, so we can work our way down the tech tree a little faster. Once the people got their shoes and shirts, I was able to promote them, and now I have to pick between the Romano-Celts and the basic Celts. Naturally, I went with the Romano-Celts as a proper Roman, but more so because the flavor text says they focus on economy and research, which appeals to me. This game sort of presents the choice like it's a binary one and that you can't do both, but you can in fact pursue both pop types. The one you pick here just decides which one you'll be pursuing for the near future. As part of our Romanization, we'll need proper food, and thankfully we can plant some wheat here. Bread is one of those buildings that comes with a negative alongside a positive, as the bakery provides income, but increases the fire hazard of your land. We can't build anything to counteract fire hazards, nor do fire hazards actually trigger until we get a larger city and unlock some stuff, so for now the hazard isn't real, but later on it will become a problem. From here I continued building up, adding new supply chains for things like tiles, and I established a sort of second residential neighborhood to the north. Then, one of the main attractions of playing in Albion came about. The local Celtic warlord Voada made her presence known. She's part of the story of the game, but in terms of actual gameplay, represents another faction that will try to take over islands, raid your land, and just be a general nuisance. Now, I can't speak to the free play mode of the game, but in the story mode everything kind of operates at your pace, so this threat of a Celtic invasion will only really come once I've done what must be done in order to progress the story. That means I'm going to basically act like it's not there until I feel like engaging with the military system. I got enough Mercator people, which are those tier 2 Romano-Celts in my city, that I unlocked a couple very important buildings. The Grammaticus and the Phantom. The Grammaticus gives some research, and the Phantom gives research and faith. Via faith, we can select a patron deity for the island, and that deity gives some boost to particular production chains. Basically, the game just continues getting more and more complex. So this gameplay loop is more or less what you engage in when it comes to the city building. It's about making collections of houses and placing buildings with area buffs around them to boost their outputs, and then providing the goods that your citizens want in order to promote them so they can work in buildings with better effects. The Grammaticus and Phantom both require Mercators to function, so we have to promote our waiters to use them. I continued developing my island, heading further north, and then I unlocked making brooches, which use a silver mine, silver forge, and fibularium supply chain. Some buildings, like the silver mine, can only be built on very particular spots, like ore veins in this case, and that's yet another challenge that the geography of the game can throw at you. The fibularium has another one of those beautiful population modifiers which makes me really want to build them. Much later on, I decided to prepare for actual battle, which is something I'd have likely needed to do much earlier where there's not the story campaign. I recruited some archers to the barracks I built, thinking that ranged units would probably be good. In many games, it feels like ranged units are strong. Shortly after, I got enough stuff to upgrade my mercators to nobles, and these, I believe, are the highest tier of citizen available. Nobles can build things like aqueducts and can terraform marshes back into regular land for your own usage. The supply chains for their goods are much more complicated, with their food good needing birds, then a place to get the tongues out of the birds, then pigs, and then a place to turn the pigs into fat, and then a building that combines those tongues and that fat into a bird tongue in aspic good, which is some kind of luxury food, I guess. I also tried out the trading system by setting up an automatic trade where one of my ships would go to my friends in Whitecliff, owned by a friendly Roman guy, to buy some olive oil and amphorae. I'm trading for it because I can't make those things on this island. With that, I felt ready to have some combat, so I completed my objectives to progress the game and then waited for Vawada to invade. She did, and with a little more stuff than I thought she might have brought for a tutorial encounter, we began combat. I had 2 melee guys and an archer guy to fight against 4 melee guys. At least they're within range of my capital building, which means I get a little extra damage from my villa. I ended up losing both of the melee guys and the archers nearly died, but we made it. This progressed me to chapter 6, at which point I was feeling like taking a break from the game. Rather than do that though, I went off to another island and made another colony. This new island of Netrixia is just the breath of fresh air I needed, so I went from wanting to stop to wanting to try making a city with the other branch of citizens. It's pretty common to see Romans in history mixing with the local cultures around them as they establish colonies at the exterior of the empire, but sometimes they'd entirely assimilate into the new lands they conquered. This is what we'll be simulating now in Netrixia, but the one Roman influence we'll keep is the devotion to the god Mars. In terms of why Mars, I was planning at first to turn this little city into a mining hub for making weapons and armor to prepare to fight Vawada's armies. The tier 2 Celtic citizen is called a smith, and smiths want cheese and beer. That definitely feels distinctly more Celtic than Roman. The buildings which smiths contribute also require a new construction material made using a laborer's yard, which consumes reeds and mud blocks, both of which come from the marsh. That means Netrixia is going to have a whole lot more stuff in the marsh compared to the other city. This is the most obvious way in which going full Celt is different from being a hybrid. You end up using the marsh instead of avoiding it or touching it begrudgingly. The brewery building, which makes beer, is a funny building by the way. It gives income but takes away knowledge from houses in the area, which is clearly representative of alcohol's intellectual suppression capabilities, but also fits in theme with the Celts' lesser focus on technology compared to the Romans. The other building of note the Smiths get is the recreation ground, which gives health, happiness, and prestige. I'm not entirely sure what prestige is for actually, but it's a stat. I've checked, but by this point I was over 6 hours into my playthrough and was running out of brain juice for learning new stuff. In fact, I was running out of brain juice for the game in general, which I blame on having COVID, as I mentioned earlier in the video. For my last act in this campaign, I ended up doing some Celtic ritual to appease Vawada, just because I could, and decided that perhaps another time I'd go build up an army and fight. I just find I'd much rather focus on the little management aspects of the game than the combat, and I figured that'll be a common sentiment in the game, as these city builder games feel like they're at their best when you're building a city. I spent a few minutes checking out my cities, feeling somewhat proud of what I'd made, but also thinking about little things I could have done differently, and also thinking I'd like to check out the free play mode to see how the AI is without a campaign story mode holding them back. I may go check that out, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this Paradox player's experience with his first Anno game. It was pretty fun, but it was very different for sure. If you want to try out Anno 117, it's coming out on November 13th, and you can watch some Twitch streams of it to unlock some cool in-game loot. Thanks again to Ubisoft for sponsoring me, and I hope the game has a successful launch. And to the dear viewers, I do say, thank you for your time.